The government of Australia has changed.
We will form a coalition majority government in the next parliament. I have always believed in miracles.
It was a period of underperformance by Australia. This was a period of disappointment. We didn't live up to our potential. And what happened was the Liberal Party, once the strongest governing party in the country since World War II, it lost its psychological and political hold on the country.
One of the great narrators of Australian political history has laid out where it all went wrong for the coalition in his new book, The Twilight of Exceptionalism, published today.
When you talk about Australian exceptionalism, what do you mean by that, and why have we lost it?
I talk about Australian exceptionalism as being the period of the Hawke, Keating, Howard, Costello governments and reforms, when Australia introduced a series of social and economic changes which essentially were leading the world. That was the period of Australian exceptionalism. And what I've argued since then, we haven't been able to match that period.
Paul Kelly says it was a time of weak Liberal leadership and a diminished cabinet.
But there's also another factor, and that is that the world is changing, Australia is changing. Government is more difficult now than it used to be. Bob Hawke or John Howard, if they were around during this period, they would find it more difficult to govern.
It began with a misreading of the public's appetite for substantial upheaval.
You, I think, make the argument that Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey in particular thought that they could replicate the Howard model. Fiscal restraint, budget surpluses, cutting spending.
Abbott and Hockey thought they were on pretty safe ground. Now, they miscalculated in two senses. A lot of the measures were inappropriate measures, either economically or politically. But secondly, there was a misjudgment because the country had changed and the government had not prepared the Australian people for a tough budget.
Paul Kelly, who's also written political histories of the Hawke, Keating, Howard, Rudd and Gillard years, offers harsh assessments of all three Liberal leaders of the last coalition government. But he's particularly critical of Malcolm Turnbull's judgment and lost potential.
He had a great ambition for the country. He did not have the political skills to implement that ambition and that agenda.
Paul Kelly suggests Turnbull's most important sliding door moment came shortly after he deposed Tony Abbott.
One of the questions was, should he have gone to an immediate election when he had a huge lead in the public opinion polls?
Turnbull decided against it, worried the Liberal Party was broke and unprepared. But it was exactly what Labor had feared the most.
I quote in the book the Labor Party Federal Director George Wright saying the thing he was most terrified about was Turnbull going to an early, quick election in 2016. George Wright said that Turnbull would have won a big victory. I quote Martin Parkinson, the head of Turnbull's department, saying, if Turnbull had done that, he would have had the virtue and the value of that strong re-election. He would have been a different and far more confident Prime Minister.
Instead, Turnbull stalled until mid-year and called an 8-week race for a double dissolution election. He was out-campaigned by Bill Shorten, lost a swathe of seats and barely fell across the line. Permanently diminished, in Kelly's words, squeezed between a revived Labor opposition and the Liberal Party's Conservative wing, which was now gunning for him.
The final and fatal mistake that Malcolm Turnbull made was in that decisive week when he lost the Prime Ministership.
In 2018, threatened by growing internal divisions, particularly on climate policy, Turnbull stood down and invited a leadership contest.
What I've argued in the book is that if Turnbull had not provoked that decision that week, then Peter Dutton would have not challenged that week.
So in other words, by making it a leadership question, he opened the door for Morrison to pursue his own ambitions.
Was put on the table. And in that situation, of course, Morrison had the opportunity to run and contest the leadership as well.
What does Turnbull say to that?
he obviously defends his decision. He says this was an incredibly difficult decision to make. He's aware of the arguments for and against.
If there's a clarion theme through these years and beyond from Paul Kelly's book, it's climate policy, which has been both a political boon for the coalition, such as Tony Abbott's 2013 victory after promising to overturn Labor's carbon tax, and a driver of some of its deepest defeats, such as when Turnbull dumped the National Energy Guarantee.
If you had to pick a moment that ignited the entire Teal campaign, which became so important, that was the moment. It became a symbol of Liberal Party retreat on climate change.
A retreat that has only intensified in recent years.
And essentially what's happened is the coalition and the Liberal Party have moved to the right, and they've moved now to repudiate net zero. Now that is a very big stand that the coalition and the Liberals have taken. We'll have to see how that plays out at the next election.
Another theme of the book is the constant turnover of leadership.
Was Scott Morrison the embodiment of the problems of the coalition, or was he just who was in the chair when it finally came to the crash in 2022?
If Scott Morrison had been the sole problem when Scott Morrison went, problem would have been solved. Well, that didn't happen at all. The problem only got worse. And the reason the problem got worse was because of the collective impact of 9 years of policy confusion, leadership changes, rancour within the party.
The party's latest leader, Angus Taylor, is fighting to reunite the coalition in the face of a resurgent One Nation.
The choice is simple for the Liberal Party: change or die, and I choose change.
It's fundamental for the survival of the party that its primary vote get ahead of Pauline Hanson's One Nation. This is the immediate challenge the Liberals face.
Leaving Paul Kelly deeply sceptical about the party's future.
Can the Liberal Party recover? I'm not going to say it can't recover. It wouldn't surprise me, though, if it fails to recover.
Opposition leader Angus Taylor joins me now. How do you feel watching that, Angus?
Oh, it's always interesting to listen to commentary, but I'm focused on the future, Sarah, and Paul makes the point that the future is what counts here.
All right, well, let me go then to the speech that you made on Friday that I referenced at the top of the show. This is the existential struggle with One Nation. You said their policies would lead to, quote, an eternity of pain, is your phrase. Given that you've now laid down this marker, do you categorically rule out doing a deal with One Nation to form government?
Oh, we've got absolutely no plan for a deal with One Nation to form government. We want to form government in our own right, in our coalition, the Liberal and National Party coalition, on the back of a strong plan and a strong team, Sarah, and that means lower taxes, lower income taxes, lower business taxes, getting rid of Labor's toxic taxes, reducing the red tape burden on business, an enterprise of business, private sector-led economy, not a government-led economy, affordable, abundant energy, more housing and capping immigration based on housing supply and putting Australians first. And I'm confident that is a plan that is what is needed right now as we face an economic crisis of Labor's making that's hurting Australians.
Don't Liberal voters have a right to know that this party that would cause, as you describe it, an eternity of pain is one you would never form government with under any circumstances?
Well, as I say, we've got absolutely no plan to form government with a party.
It's not quite the same as ruling it out, is what I'm looking for.
You know, as I say, I want a coalition with the National Party, not just going into the next election, but post the next election in government. That's the plan. That is, there's no ambiguity about that.
Well,
and can I explain why?
I just want to be absolutely clear about the ambiguity here. You say that there is no ambiguity, but I'm asking you to rule it out as an option. Doesn't leaving it unruled out leave it on the table?
No, I'm ruling it out. There's no plan. There's no plan.
You're ruling it out.
Well, there is no plan, I can tell you right now, and I have been very clear about this 100 times, I don't know how many times, but many, many times. And the reason is simple, that One Nation would, as a government, leave us with an eternity of pain. And they have a grab bag of policies where even just a small subset of them would take this country into a fiscal crisis higher inflation, higher interest rates, higher mortgage costs, and that's not something Australians can afford when we are in the midst of an economic crisis of Labor's creation.
So if you will allow me just one more time to pose the question, because there is a slight difference between there is no plan and I, Angus Taylor, as the leader of the Liberal Party, am ruling out forming government.
Well, I've already done that.
You've ruled
and
it
I've
out.
said that there is no plan to form any kind of coalition with One Nation. What there is a plan to do is to get rid of a Labor government that has put us into an economic crisis where Australians are poorer, where taxes are higher, where government is bigger, and young Australians are losing hope of owning a home. Australians in small business are losing hope of their dreams with their small business, as we see the highest rate of insolvencies ever in this country. People are losing hope for the future of our country, and that's got to change.
Let's go to what Paul Kelly said, a great historian of the Liberal Party, as you well know. He says the leadership of the Liberal Party failed when it was in government and left voters confused. So how will you succeed where Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison failed?
Well, absolute clarity and differentiation versus our competitors.
Including One Nation.
And I'll start with the economy, which is in crisis, where Australians are getting poorer. The biggest hit, the biggest reduction to standards of living of any developed country in the world, Sarah. I mean, we are used to being at the top of the league table. On this one, we are at the bottom of the league table. It's the worst possible position. And Australians are feeling it. You've got Australians with a mortgage paying $30,000 more in mortgage costs than when Labor came to power. Prices are going up faster than wages. Small businesses are going out of business at a record rate. More data on that today. And Labor is imposing more taxes on Australians at exactly the time when they need to be liberated from taxes and big government. This is the wrong answer for this country at this time.
Let's talk about some other things that you raised in this major speech that you gave on Friday. You're critical in that speech of wage rises in the care economy. Can you spell out who in that field doesn't deserve a pay increase?
Well, you should read the next sentence, which is, I said, people do deserve to be well paid in those sectors.
Let's clear it up for the audience. This is what you said exactly. Under Labor, the care economy has exploded. Segments of this disproportionately unionised workforce have been awarded hefty pay increases. So
read the next sentence, Sarah.
Well, just on that, that's very clear. You're making a commentary there.
You should read the next sentence, where I said, and I will say it for you, that those people deserve to be well paid. And the way to be well paid is to have a strong economy.
Yes, but hefty pay increases, let's just stay there for the moment. Hefty pay increases is not someone saying it sounds like a good idea.
Well,
so I want to know...
By not including the next sentence, it's not a fair portrayal of what I said.
Well, you're saying the care economy has exploded. That suggests the care economy has got too big for you.
It's exploded. It's a statement of fact.
So it's too big. So
it's
where would you make it smaller and how?
Can I say that I go on to say that Australians deserve good services and the people working in those sectors deserve to be well paid. But what I will also say is that is only possible with a strong economy, Sarah. Now, we've laid out areas where there are savings, and it's not in the care economy.
Well,
the savings... No.
Well, let's be clear about this, because if you're not suggesting there's a problem in the care economy, why do you use the terms that you chose, hefty pay increase and the care economy has exploded? It suggests that there's something wrong with what happened when the Fair Work Commission made its recent award.
No, look, go on and read the next couple of sentences, and I'll say them again if you need me to. But what is clear? Well, I said that those people, Australians, understand that those people working in that sector deserve to be well paid, and those care sectors are important to the economy. But let's be clear, government has got too big in this country. Government has got too big. And we have laid out...
do you want to scale back the care economy?
If I can finish. Where we see savings opportunities is in corporate handouts, corporate welfare that this government is doing through programs like the National...
What about in the care economy?
I'm laying out where we see the savings opportunities.
You're the one that used that phrase, under Labor, the care economy has exploded. Clearly means it got too big. So where did it get too big?
That is not what I said, Sarah. And if I will go on and say where government can get smaller in this country, if you'll let me.
Sure.
The first is corporate handouts, where we're seeing this government handing money to big companies, hand over fist. We saw that with Side Quantum, a company that's not even based here in Australia. We've got a home bureaucracy, housing bureaucracy, that is spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on housing, and yet we've got less houses being built than when we were last in government. We've got a climate bureaucracy that is spending billions and billions and billions, and yet emissions are barely moving. I mean, these are programs that are failing this country. If we are to have a smaller government, they are programs that can go and should go. And I laid that out in the budget and reply. And that is central to getting to a strong economy where we can afford the services that Australians deserve.
But I'm just going to insist on the fact that you use those words to describe the care economy. Let me just clarify one thing with you. Recent decisions in the Fair Work Commission addressed historical undervaluation of women in the care economy. Do you agree that women's work in that sector was historically undervalued and needed to be changed?
They deserve to be well paid, and I said that in the next sentence. And if you were to give a complete representation of what I said, you should say that. So I was very clear about that. But the broader point here is that government has got too big under Labor, and we have laid out where it can be smaller, where there is wasteful spending, and if we are to get inflation down and interest rates down and have the prosperous economy that can afford the core services that we need, but can also ensure that young Australians have rising incomes,
do me a
then
favour,
we need
Angus,
to have government that's fit for size.
So explain to viewers what this means. So if you're saying the care economy exploded, hefty pay increases, how would you change the care economy for it to deserve a better explanation than
the area that we have already focused on for some time and sought to work with Labor on is to make sure that the NDIS grows at a sustainable rate, and that is an area that we have said for many years, indeed, from soon after we went into opposition. That we were prepared to work with the Labor Party to make sure we have a sustainable.
So no changes in the rest of the care economy?
We have not laid out any plans for changes in those areas, Sarah, and this is the point I'm making. We do see wasteful spending. I've laid out some of those areas where there is wasteful spending, and we do think that the NDIS needs to be sustainable, and we'll continue to work with Labor to do everything we possibly can to make sure it is. Not just because we've got to have smaller government in this country, and contain the growth of government in this country, but also because the people who are on the NDIS deserve to know that it is sustainable.
Let me come back to housing, because there are figures in 9 newspapers today that show there's a majority of support now for the idea that house prices will fall, including amongst the home-owning generations, if you like. Do you still want to see house prices go up?
I want to see affordability improve. And we know...
House prices up or down?
It's affordability, it's affordability that matters, Sarah, here. And the key to... affordability is worth spending a moment on, because it's what counts. If you're a young home buyer, first home buyer, the thing that matters is whether you can afford to buy a house. And the most important factor in that is interest rates. They are too high. Labor told us that the era of higher interest rates was over, that they were coming down and they were going to stay down after a cut during the election campaign, and yet they've gone back up. And we know that critical to keeping interest rates down is to contain inflation, to contain the growth in government, to make sure we have a productive, competitive economy, and we don't have that under Labor. So lower interest rates are crucial. Secondly, you've got to have rising incomes. That's absolutely central to affordability. And we don't have that increase in standards of living under this government that we've been used to enjoying in this country. So these are the factors that drive affordability more than anything else.
Angus Taylor, I appreciate you joining us, and particularly coming on after Paul Kelly had made his stentorian remarks. Thank you very much. Or is that stentorious? I'm not sure, but thank you.
Good to be with you.